Friends, things are getting serious out there. We're getting reports now that this new round of U.S. sanctions is really biting hard. We've gone after a bunch of corporations, banks around the world that we haven't gone after before, and it's scaring a lot of banks, a lot of corporations in other countries really bad, especially in China. They're changing their behaviors. This is having a big impact, which I know the people in Washington, D.C. are like, yeah, finally, they're going to start obeying the sanctions. But friends, this is going to blow up in our face. We need to talk about this. Let's jump into it. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade. And these are the things the mainstream media out there are not talking about. We are on the brink of World War III. That's just the simple fact of this. We've abused our position with the U.S. dollar in the world so bad that countries around the world are dumping the U.S. dollar. We will not have influence. Our sanctions will mean diddly squat soon. And the reports are that banks out of China are stopping their transactions with Russia. And like I said, there's going to be the Washington, D.C. elite are going to go, good, they should stop. We told them to stop. But here's the thing. They're in Washington, D.C., which is the capital of not the world, but the capital of the United States of America. And they are impacting directly, they're attacking directly banks in Dubai, they're attacking banks in Qatar, they're attacking banks in Saudi Arabia, China, and other countries that are supposed to be either our allies or not supposed to be our enemies. And yet we are attacking them with tools that we're not even allowed to use during wartime. We'll just put that one in perspective right there. What we're doing are technically war crimes. And we're doing them against countries we're not even at war with. Only the United States can commit war crimes when not at war with people. It's truly a marvel to behold. And this just adds up to why the world is so fed up. We say, and we want to believe, that the United States is moral and the United States is principled, but really it comes across the rest of the world as if the United States is just a bully. Did we sit down with the United Nations and hammer out these sanctions? Nope. We just unilaterally are just like, this is the way it is. No banks, no matter where they are going to do business with Russia. I mean, it's one thing to say no U.S. banks are going to do business with Russia. You could even say no U.S. banks are going to do business with banks that do business with Russia. I mean, that could even be seen. But now we are going after and punishing businesses in other countries that we have no jurisdiction over. We're abusing the trust and the position that we have. So we're cutting these banks out of SWIFT. And so here, this is how bad it is. Just in the last month, reports are that Chinese banks are blocking approximately 80% of Russian transactions now. Now, that's bigly different. These are like the transactions that would have gone through in previous months. 80% of all transactions with Russia from China have been blocked in the past month. What happens when you cage an animal? What happens when you provoke? Now, you can argue the fact that we don't like Russia and they deserve everything they're going to get. But here's the simple fact. Do we want to go to war with China? Because this is how you go to war with China. Back in World War II, why did Japan attack the United States at Pearl Harbor? It was because of the economic sanctions we had on the Japanese. Now, it's not in any way, shape, or form saying what they did was okay. It certainly was not okay when they attacked Pearl Harbor. Certainly not okay when they attack the other allied bases across Southeast Asia on that same day. They actually attacked multiple targets, not just Pearl Harbor at the same time. Of course, as Americans, we don't care about the British and the Dutch and all that kind of stuff like that. But anyway, they did that because we were blocking the oil from getting to them. Now, why were we blocking the oil from getting to them? Well, because they were committing massive war crimes against the Chinese and the Koreans. So, I mean, you can always go back one step. It's kind of like the whole, people are like, oh, Americans occupying Native American land. It's like, yeah, well, the Native Americans took it from someone else too. So, I mean, who took it from someone else? Who took it from someone else? I mean, we can always play this game where, well, they did that because so-and-so did that and so-and-so did that. My point is, when you do something like this to China, there will be a response. It may be an unjustified response against the United States, but there will be a response. You can't just go in there and start destroying the trade of another country without their consent and expect there to be no repercussions. The simple fact is that China sits down at the table with us and they don't say things directly usually. Now, this past week, that's been something different just happened. National Security Advisor Sullivan went to China, and China gave him a slap across the face, in part due to this. So he goes into a meeting. It's just supposed to be with some lower level people. He didn't realize he was about to be ambushed by Chairman Xi. President Xi. But before he went in, basically he got ambushed by somebody else. Chinese General Zhang got him in a handhold and shook his hand, and they sat down across the table from each other and then said, China demands that the United States stop military collusion between the U.S. and Taiwan, stop arming Taiwan. And you watch the video and you can see National Security Advisor Sullivan just like, what's happening? Because the Chinese don't do this. The Chinese are all about protecting people's honor and not insulting people to their face, not being direct. What they'll normally do is they'll be like, don't do this. Or it would be appropriate not to do that. The United States directness is like, don't do that or else we will do this. China doesn't do that. And so this sounds still kind of soft, but for China, this is extremely in your face, final warning. We told you not to do that. Stop arming Taiwan. It doesn't get any more direct or clear than that. What are the consequences if we continue to do what we're going to do? Because let's just face it, we're going to continue doing that. The idea of people in Washington, D.C. not stealing our money and buying weapons from the military-industrial complex to give away to somebody in other countries, that's not going to happen even if China asks us to stop, okay? They're going to do that anyway because they need to get their money for the re-elections and stuff like that. So that cycle is going to continue to go. Everybody in the Defense Department works at the Defense Department long enough to get jobs in the military-industrial complex. And they get jobs in the military-industrial complex at a level commensurate with how many contracts they got those companies. Perhaps that sounds cynical, but yet, if you look at it, it's absolutely truthful. Exactly truthful. That's exactly what happens. So, China looked our national security advisor in the eyeballs and says, stop arming Taiwan. So the question, well, one, Sullivan didn't push back on that. He did this whole this is very unusual that we get to have these high-level type conversations. That was his weasel way of not interacting with the conversation at all. Then President Xi comes wandering in and it basically drives it home. Now, President Xi was the good cop. Chinese General Zhang was the bad cop. And they were playing that. This is very much how China does this and how a lot of stuff happens in Asia. Very indirect. But this was meant to be a strong warning, a slap across the face, and a back off, this is your final warning type situation. Now, what happens if we don't? And like I said, we won't stop. So what's going to happen next? One option is that China could just start giving weapons to Russia. If the United States is arming Taiwan, China may just start arming Russia. That's one option that they could do. Now, I don't know that that's necessarily the first thing that they'll do, but I will say this, that what they're going to do is probably not going to be as direct as we would normally expect from another country. Don't do this or we'll do that, and then you cross that line, then they go out and they do what they promised they were going to do. But, as I've said before, China may invade Taiwan. And they may do that in the next several months. Because they probably are guessing that they don't know who's going to be the next president, right? They got the people that are bought and paid for, and if those people get into office, then they have all the time in the world. Because those people are destroying our military. We have military ships that can't even go to sea because we don't have sailors for them. The merchant marines being stripped, while that's under the Department of Transportation, and Peter Buttigieg, or I have another name for him, which is not appropriate. Anyway, he's not doing his job. He's running around with his husband and his kids, being a shining example of wokeness in the White House. Speaking of diversity hires. So we have merchant marine ships, resupply ships that can't go out and resupply U.S. Navy ships. That's a big problem. A big problem. So what do we do now? We're having our military destroyed, but China is also on a timetable. They know that if President Trump gets back into office, it's going to be a lot harder for them to invade Taiwan. It may be 4 more years until afterwards they might get a chance to attack Taiwan, but they'll know that for the next 4 years, the U.S. military is going to be getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. So even afterwards, and they get the opportunity with a weak leader, potentially, they'll be facing a weak leader with a strong military. Right now, weak military, weak leader. We have a leader that doesn't even show up at the White House. He took a 17-day vacation before going on the campaign trail to go utter nonsense here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A 17-day vacation. Who here has had a 17-day vacation? I don't even know what that means. Sitting at the beach. Working diligently. So, I think China is going to potentially do something very drastic. We may see them just start... we're attacking their banks, and their banks may just start using alternative payment methods. And then China could just start protecting their banks and their corporations from U.S. sanctions as a policy of the country. They could back up the Chinese banks and say, we'll protect you from the U.S. Sanctions. Any kind of hits you take, we will protect you from them, and we'll make sure that they're right. If you can't do business in certain countries, we will provide a alternate source of funding and payment systems for you to use. And that's going to be sorted out real soon, because they're doing a lot of trade with Russia, and suddenly those payments aren't going through. So they're going to figure out a way, whether it's barter, they're talking about barter systems, like an advanced barter system, or they're talking about implementing their Brics equivalent of the SWIFT, their Brics alternative to the SWIFT network. They've been working on it. China has its own payment system that's alternative to SWIFT. Russia has its own system that they're working on, and they're trying to integrate the two so that they can then use them together to make transfers and payments across their countries. Whenever that happens, that's when China could just be like, you know what? What else do you want? Yeah, we got these dual-use things that we've been selling you, but why don't we just sell you the weapon systems themselves? You want missiles? We're great at making missiles. What we don't talk about too often is that across from Taiwan are an estimated 15,000 intermediate ballistic missiles. 15,000. China builds missiles like nobody's business. Now, these aren't like the super long-range ones that are designed to intercontinental or whatever. They're designed for theater. They're not trying to attack the United States. They're trying to attack the United States ships that are near their coast. And these are the type of missiles that if China just starts shipping over to Russia, will turn around and make the war in Eastern Europe very different very quickly. Iran has just authorized hundreds and hundreds of ballistic missiles to go to Russia. We've just heard that that's going to happen in the next several days. And of course, the United States is in a tizzy about that. What about thousands of missiles from China? Because they're going to look at us and say, you're arming Taiwan, we're going to arm your enemy. We're not prepared for that. We're not prepared for countries to start standing up to the United States, and that's exactly what's starting to happen. We're not the big bullies on the corner anymore. We're now the weaklings in the wheelchair that other people are coming around and saying, you know what are you going to do about it? And the answer is the United States isn't going to do anything about it. We can't do anything about it. There's big stuff coming, friends. And we're not going to like what it looks like. World War III is right around the corner. All right, friends. If you found this video useful or helpful, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, that like button down below. And if you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report out.